Sorry for this technical pause. Apparently, Microsoft hardware doesn't really like Apple, so.
That's a shocker.
That's the first one, right? My name is Vasiliy Popov, and I do UX, user experience, and I do product design. I do it for many years, and hopefully that's all you need to know. And now that it's all over, we can move to the topic at hand. Every time I talk about user experience in audiences like today, people always ask me kind of similar questions. Something along the lines of, how do I improve my application? What are the best 5 things you can suggest to me to do? What are the exact steps to reproduce? What are the best practices? And so on and so on. And I usually have kind of 2 answers. First of all, every case is unique. You actually have to understand the case, the product, the user, before you make any decision on what to improve there and if anything needs improvement at all. And the second question is, well, there's Google. You can use it and you will find all the results. And the thing is, with Google, if you look for anything on UX, you will certainly find something along the lines of 10 steps to complete shutdown of your brain. It's really hard to see here, but there will be articles like 10 UX design trends, 50 best UX practices, and top 12 best practices, and something similar to these articles. Something about Kim Kardashian and Kanye West or something. And, well, the thing is, if there's supply, there will be demand. People want something practical. People don't want to read really long articles or study research papers. And it's fine, but it got me thinking, when was the last time I personally read anything actually resembling scientific research on the user experience? Have I actually ever read anything like that? Or was everything I've done with user experience is just an opinion hidden behind common sense, hidden behind this fashionable banner, user experience? And just from my understanding, how many user experience and user interface designers are here today? This is not many, so it's still a development conference, right? But I hope you will be all on the same page here. Before we go any further, I want to kind of explain why I think this question is very important. Is UX a science? In software development, there's this triangle. Developers, testers, and designers. Test engineers and designers can be UI designers, UX designers, or product designers for that matter. Doesn't really matter much. And I call it triangle of hate, because if you think about it, developers, they hate testers, because testers always bring, stupid bugs that cannot be reproduced, and testers hate them back because, well, they cannot reproduce what we've tested, and they close bugs without fixing them. Developers hate designers because designers always ask for some really stupid things that nobody cares about. And testers hate designers because designers take away precious time required for development and for the things that nobody cares about, really small improvements, move button there and change the color or something like that. And of course, designers hate both tester and developer because nobody really takes what we say seriously. Everybody hates designers. And you probably heard something like this. You need this button here? There? It's perfectly fine there. Why do you need to change the color? Color is fine. It's blue already. Why do you need to change the shade? I mean, larger? Why do you need larger? What the fuck is bounce effect? No, we will not make any animations because animations suck and they take away resources. It's fine, users will be able to understand. If those UI designers present, you probably heard something like this, right? And, well, what do? Sometimes you can explain why you need something. You can show how others do it. You can invent some proof, it sometimes helps. It helps if you have authority, if you are kind of senior in the project, but most of the time UX designers or UI designers are consultants on the project without any authority. So what we have to do is just simply beg or really ask nicely or wait for some resources to be available to do something. And it would certainly help if we had something to back our statements up, right? If we could say, it's science, bitch. Right? And, well, wouldn't it help, right? It certainly would annoy developers more, that's for sure. Also, and I jump ahead a little bit, it would also probably help ourselves to kind of back up our statements that we make, our common sense with some scientific facts. Because, to be honest, common sense in many cases is just an example of poor judgment. And you have to be careful when you say common sense prevails. So, how many times, for example, you as designers had to change something that you designed and fought for really hard just last week? And you ask developers, can we change this back? And developers hate you more for this. And developers here, how many times designers ask you to change things back and forward? Like change the colors or buttons or whatnot. So let's find out if UX is a science, right? To actually be able to understand if we can make those statements that are hard to argue against. If you read any literature on the subject, there are two different fields of science, kind of areas, so to say, hard and soft sciences. Examples of hard science are simple. Physics, chemistry, molecular biology, and similar. Examples of soft sciences is sociology, ecology, and of course psychology. And the thing with soft sciences is that soft sciences deal with a lot of unknowns, a lot of variables and causes, which are commonly produced by so-called human free will. You can probably see where I'm going with this. A lot of sciences that deal with humans are really hard because you cannot really predict humans very well. And I also have to mention quasi-science and pseudoscience. Quasi-science is something like almost a science. They do all the things correctly, but they're not quite there yet. And as the time goes by, they can either become real science or be demoted and debunked into pseudoscience, like it happened with phrenology, astrology, and parapsychology. And pseudoscience is just that, not really a science. And a lot of examples around us, and I will probably not bore you with the subject anymore, because we here talking about UX, right? Not about science. But if you want to read more about this, and I invite you to, because it allows you to kind of, I'll say, train your brain a little bit. If you want to try to understand, if you want to be able to tell real science from bullshit, that's the book you could start with, called Nonsense on Stilts. It's not really easy to read, it's still a sort of scientific book, but it's really great in the subject. It explores the science, quasi-science, and pseudoscience, and what are the common traits behind it. So what is UX then? Is it science? Is it quasi-science? Is it pseudoscience? There's this definition of science that I like. The common thread in all science is the ability to produce and test hypotheses based on systematically collected empirical data by experiments or observations. There are more things to science, of course, is like ability to repeat stuff that you predicted and actually to predict something, but this is the main definition. And based on that, we can try to understand if UX is a science. Do we have hypotheses in UX? Of course we do. We put forward ideas like, maybe this button will work better here. Maybe this color will change engagement with the users. Maybe this change will increase conversion rate or something like that. And of course those are not really like scientific hypotheses, but still those are valid, and we try to validate them sometimes. And how we do it? We observe and experiment, just as science definition tells us to. If we are lucky, we have time and resources, we can put users in a controlled environment, in a controlled room, we can observe how they work, what they do, and we can then make a decision if our hypothesis, if our theory was correct or not. Then, of course, if we don't have enough resources, but we are working with large companies, with large numbers, we can A/B test some visitors of a popular site, right? And the last resort is statistics and reports like Google Analytics, where we try to kind of read the data and understand large numbers of users and their behavior. But still, those are experiments and observations. So based on that, based on those things, I can say that, well, congratulations, you are dealing with science. UX is definitely science, and you are scientists. Almost, but not quite there yet. The problem here that I see is that we, as practitioners, we don't really interest ourselves or know much about fundamentals. What is the foundation of user experience as a science? What it feeds upon? And there are some theories and things to learn, but we don't do those because we kind of try to do 50 best things to improve, right? Those things. And we also don't read any scientific papers because, well, you could just fall asleep, and that's not on us. It's just really hard to read. And if we compare user experience to psychology, and I think those are similar in many ways as sciences. What I've seen many UX designers do compared to that, they just take online personality tests. We take UX examples and we apply them. This is similar to studying psychology by taking personality tests. It's the science, not really. And the same with us, what we do. We just take some advice and we follow them blindly. But you know, it's fine. Science is hard. Not everyone needs to do science. It's completely fine to be practical about it. And still, I can be as bold as in saying that even the small usability testings that we do, studies, those can be considered as science, because we put forth a theory, we test it, we validate it, and we either approve it or disprove it. So a little bit of science. But it helps to know fundamentals. Just like with physics, you need to know Newton's laws. And in psychology, you should be familiar with Freud's theories, even though they're dated and kind of simplified a little bit. It still helps. And in UX, we also have a few things to learn and know to be considered as at least proper practitioners of this science. Excuse me. Oh, connection lost. Okay, so first thing first. User experience is like a branch or a part of a number of disciplines. There's a cognitive science, study of the mind. There's the human factors engineering, and this is the science dealing with application of information for systems and for humans' use. And then, of course, there's human-computer interaction, commonly referred to as HCI. And it researches the use of computers, of course, by people. And there are links that I provided. You can see the number 4, but you can start with 1 and just follow those and read about those. Those 3 fundamental disciplines, they form, explain, and predict everything related to user experience today. And to understand how modern UI trends are affected by this science, let's go through a couple of very simple examples, but I still like them very much. Anybody here know who this guy is? Okay. I see one hand. Great. But it's okay, you guys are mostly developers, so you're forgiven. Paul Fitz was a psychologist in the last century. He, in 50s and 60s of the last century, he was very kind of successful and very well known for things he's done in aviation safety. But his most well-known work is so-called Fitz's law. And I will share you a small secret. Fitz's law is one of the most fundamental things that explains many trends in modern UI, and it affects UI of the operating systems on desktop, on phones, and everything else. And it was first proposed in 1954, before any computers, personal computers existed. So let's do some science, right? It's very, very complex equations. So what Fitz's law is used for is to model active pointing, whether with a finger or hand or with a cursor on the computer screen. And this law predicts that, I will read this because I'm not doing science. It predicts that the time required to rapidly move to a target area, think button, you need to move to the button, your cursor to the button, is a ratio between the distance to the target and the width of the target. If you translate this, it means that clicking a larger button that is next to you, closer to you, is much easier than clicking a button that is smaller and farther away from you. And most of you will say like, well, duh, of course it is. It's too simple. And it's definitely not a complex thing. But the power of the law is that it backs it up with some mathematical kind of measurements. And using logarithmic function shows that increasing a small button to a larger one will greatly increase usability index. But making already large button larger will not yield such an effective results. And the thing is, we kind of apply this law today commonly, even without knowing so, and we use the products of it. If you look at the brake pedal in your car, you can see that it's larger and closer to you than the gas pedal, and that's the reason behind this. Heavy machinery in factories, they always have this emergency stop button that is elevated, meaning it's closer to you, and it's larger than the rest of the buttons. Again, very simple, nothing too fancy about it, but it's all kind of functions of Fitz's law. But when we apply it to a computer screen, there are a few twists to discuss. And here's the thing, when you move your mouse and you reach the edge of the screen, it just stops there on a single monitor, of course. It stops there on the last row or column of pixels. And in Fitz's law interpretation, this means that the screen edges, they're infinitely wide. You don't have to actually target the screen edge. You don't have to look. You just throw your mouse at it and you reach this last row. This makes those areas of the screen, like edges, top, right, bottom, left, very easy to reach. And it makes those edges like a prime real estate on the screen to utilize when you design your user interfaces. And there are some other prime areas on the screen. Who can tell which ones? Oleg? Top left, what it is? Corner. And okay, we have 4 corners. There's one more.
Middle. Center of the screen.
Center of the screen? Well, if your mouse is somewhere not in the center of the screen.
Notification frame.
Right under mouse.
Yes. There you go. Because the area right under your mouse is already there. The distance is 0, which means it's infinitely easy to access. And corners, of course, again, those what's happening with the connection? And corners are, in a sense of Fitz's law, they're infinitely wide and tall. You don't really have to think about when you move your mouse to the corner. You just throw it there, and it stops in a precise pixel. And if you design a user interface to take advantage of it, you can greatly improve the productivity of the user. And here's an example that I really like: Windows versus Mac. When you move away from Windows to Mac, the first thing that will annoy the hell out of you is that every window menu is actually at the top of the screen, right there, the very top. You move your screen, you move your window anywhere, and you will see that the menu is at the top. And in Windows, of course, the menus are always moving with the window, and they are right under the title bar. And you can probably now understand why it's made like that. Because this menu is much easier to access. You just throw your mouse top, up and you will reach the menu. Then you just have to fine tune your action here and select the menu. Here you have to be very precise, and in Windows 3.0 this is the close button, right? And the file menu is here, so you can see the problem potentially. You have to really look closely what you do here and target the area. Even though they can be closer to your mouse because you work with the window, but your mouse can be here, but it still will be easier to reach this area than this menu here. In Windows 95, Microsoft gave us taskbar, and of course taskbar is a great example of how they take advantage of prime pixels at the edge of the screen, at the bottom. A lot of articles say that actually if you move this taskbar to the top of the screen, you will increase your productivity, simply because we read from the top to the bottom. But it doesn't matter, it's still right at the edge of the screen, and you just move your mouse and you can select anything here without targeting, because staying on the last row will select this window. This is the example of how we take advantage of the prime pixel right under our mouse. When you move anywhere on the screen, when you right click, you will probably see the context menu. You don't have to reach anywhere, you just open this menu here. And this is the prime pixel right under your mouse cursor. In Windows we also have close button, which if you maximize the window will appear in the top right corner. And to close the window you don't have to look at this button. Just move your mouse to the corner and it will close it. And the title bar, actually, if you just move to the top edge of the screen and double click, the window will restore to the original size. This is taking advantage of those prime pixels I mentioned earlier. Then there is a start button, and that's an interesting thing about it. It first appeared, of course, in Windows 95, and almost in every version was one of the prime things in Microsoft operating systems. But the thing is, in all versions before Windows XP, there's a gap here. And if you move your mouse to the corner, you will not be able to open start menu somehow. They put it in the right place, just one pixel. They missed one pixel. They fixed it in XP. They fixed it in XP. But with XP, there's another problem. You can do this, and you kind of lose all advantage, right? And there is a number of things that they could do. They can make it larger, or they can stick it to the bottom, but they decided not to. So users who maximize their taskbar lost the advantage of being able to hit start button blindly. On Mac, in OS X, they really do really great thing with corners. As we just found out, the corners, one of the is the best place actually on the screen to put any function there. And you can go to the settings and assign function to any corner, and whenever you move your mouse to this corner, this action will be engaged. And whenever I explain Mac to a first-time user, I always show this function. It can be confusing at first, and of course if you move mouse haphazardly, randomly, you will always hit those corners kind of accidentally and engage the function. But when you are used to it, it will increase your productivity really in a great way. If I can show you, I don't know. So here, of course it's a two-screen setup, but if I move the mouse to the corner, it shows me desktop. I move it there again, it closes. The same goes with mission control. I move this to the top left corner and it shows mission control. I move it back, it closes everything. And the fact is that it's actually faster than hitting the shortcuts on the keyboard, because you can do it without even thinking, looking, just automatically. And this really increases the productivity when you switch between tasks in Windows. So if we kind of summarize Fitz's law, there are a few rules implied by it. You must create larger targets, at least aim for it. You should minimize cursor or finger movement for the user to make it easier for them. You should avoid muscle or tension, forcing them to make really weird gestures with your mouse or with the finger. And you should exploit prime pixels when you can. Of course, prime pixels are a funny thing, because in operating systems they can be taken advantage of, but if you build a web application, it stays within the browser, which is part of the operating system. So unless you go full screen, and I rarely seen users do this quite often, you cannot take advantage of those pixels, unfortunately. That means that in many ways, applications built for operating system directly will still be one step ahead in terms of usability of web applications. It's a very minor things, but still. But there are things you should consider when you apply Fitz's law, because it's not enough just to simply kind of make everything larger. There are cases where you have to think about it. When you make all buttons large, will break the balance of the UI. You should sometimes separate items into groups and move them away from each other. So some groups become harder to reach, but this makes more sense from the logical standpoint of view. And of course, we as UX designers must make sure we don't build kind of unforgiving, destructive user interfaces. So you don't put delete button or like format your hard drive button next to OK or cancel, right? Because users can do it accidentally. So you need to make sure that the destructive actions are harder to reach. And there's an article with examples. Again, this is the link for it. If you want to play around with Fitz's law, there's a great interactive presentation. Here's the link for it. Just open there, and it allows you to experiment with your clicking. It will show you some targets, and you will be able to move your mouse between them and see the results measured. And here are a few more links to read about Fitz's law. 6 to 9, then 15 and 16. I also like very much this quiz. I will not show you here. I wanted to invite all of you to kind of take this quiz, but it's long and actually it's serious, but it produces really funny results, and it's quite great in terms of being able to evaluate yourself as a UX designer, UI designer, how well you understand how interfaces are made. It's based on Fitz's law, so you will be able to take it much more easier now. But I invite you, it can be done offline, so you can print it and hand out to your colleagues, and they have to write answers. I'll just explain to you what are the answers there. And I invite you to take this quiz because it's really great. But moving on, there's another law that's very interesting. It's called Higgs's law. Higgs law. And it dates back to 1885. And I was too lazy to kind of change this. I'm sorry. This is from Wikipedia. And the law describes the time it takes for a person to make a decision depending on the number of equally available choices. And of course, increasing the number of choices will increase the decision time logarithmically. So number of options, time to respond. Very simple, very obvious, similar to Fitz's law. But again, the mathematics behind it allows you to kind of understand some of the most fundamental things, like making number of choices to increase from 2 to 3 will make things significantly worse. But going up from 9 to 10 is already not that bad. It's already bad enough. And for our sake in translation, the more choices you give to the user, the more time they will need to make a decision, the harder interface will be for them. The worse will be user experience. And this also proves that one longer menu is better than 2 shorter menus. But shorter menu or no menu at all is always better. And there are a few kind of additions to this law by different researchers, and one of those takes into account IQ of a person. And you can see the kind of approximate results here. And if you assume that our users are infinitely stupid, you can understand that it's always better to take away the choice from them entirely. And one can argue that Apple, by not giving users a choice, they maybe lose power users, but they win masses. And it's not that simple, of course, but I kind of like this point. And if you want to read more about this, here are a few links, 11 to 13. And before you all fall asleep, let's conclude. So I do believe, answering the original question, I do believe UX is a science. And I kind of always liked psychology because maybe it doesn't allow us to entirely predict human behavior, but it can at least explain it. I think UX is similar in this way, and we are all able to do more with it. And we are able to take UX as a science and make better products for users and product owners. Because area of human cognition is so huge, there are things to do there. And it would be great if some of you would be not simply taking and doing psychology based on zodiac signs and reading UX examples and applying them blindly, but maybe you can do some research with your users and maybe write a paper or two or something. I don't know, it would help. Here are some areas that definitely require some additional exploration in terms of user interface design. And if you want to be immersed in scientific reading, here's the mother link, number 14 here, and it contains links to 80-something articles, which research papers about formal and informal user experience related research. I mean, you can read this for a long time. And here's a summary of what I just talked about. Sciences are different. UX is a science. There's a Fitts law, there's a Higgs law, there are some other laws, like Miller's law. And try to dig deeper, do studies and research, read the links that are provided, and that's it. I was also asked to include some slides here for feedback. You probably know what to do here. And these are the sponsors. Thank the sponsors. Thank you. Thank you. Any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. Do the prime pixels apply to mobile phones?
Sure.
They're like in the corners.
The thing with mobile phones, Fitts law is fully applied there, but you need to see the pattern of how people hold the phone. So there are studies on that, quite well-established ones, and usually people use thumbs. And the area that is easily accessible by the thumb is the area that's most easily accessible, and you should take advantage of it. And the prime pixels are still edges of the screen, but users like to do this, slide back and forward, right? And modern operating systems on Android and iOS, they take advantage of it. Like going back, you just slide your finger from the left, or going forward from the right. And it's kind of the same thing, because you don't have to think about it. You just slide your finger from the edge of the screen, because you can feel it. You don't have to think about it.
Shows applies back. There is options about less options. But what? Yes. Why the second option is easier?
Yeah.
Because there is the same amount of options, but
You can focus on those 4.5 here.
But there is scroll bar.
Of course. But it's easier for you to comprehend this list, because you can scroll and go down.
But for last radio buttons, it will be harder. If I want to select some of the last radio buttons, in the first example it's simpler.
Well, you're developers, right? I personally do agree with you, simpler, but the studies show that it's easier. I mean, I haven't designed this, but I've stolen this picture from someone. And it was a study on Higgs law, and they claim that this is easier. It's counterintuitive. This is an example of common sense not being able to actually explain things properly for us. You would think that this one is harder than this one, but apparently this is easy.
It's already written that it's easier as the right one.
It's written, yeah.
I'd like to comment a little bit on this picture and on other things. Of course, we can say that it's scientifically researched something, but it's just results of this researches, and they can be interpreted as we want it. Right here, about this, it's not the same. The main thing I want to talk about. Right here, we can see the main law of the human thinking, that human, can take only seven plus minus two things at once. So this large list is is too big for
us to be able to comprehend. This is the Miller's law actually that I mentioned. Yeah. It says about seven items. Yeah.
If we need to choose, when we're registering somewhere, to choose a country,
well,
well, it's again, don't think in terms of silver bullets. As I said, there are cases against Fitts law. There are cases against Hicks law. You should not just take the research and apply it blindly. There are different cases. Countries, yes, of course, country selection should be long, but it actually helps because people kind of know how countries are sorted and they can find their country if they need it. But if you look at the list of items that are entirely unknown to you, equally unchoosable, then it will be difficult.
And I want to talk about this Fitts law, where there was corners, sides. I'm sorry, I will talk Russian if you don't mind, because I'm a little bit confused. Но, значит, в этом смысле я думаю, что Фитц имел в виду то, что человек в первую очередь замечает вот эти вот, по закону Фитца, что вот эти вот углы и стороны, они самые заметные для человека. То есть, но другое дело, как мы это используем. То есть, если вы в том же примере, который вы упоминали насчет Windows и Mac, то есть не всегда нам нужно меню, не всегда нам нужно вот это вот, как это называется, панель задач, не всегда нам нужно старт меню. Поэтому нам не всегда нужно помещать их на самое видное место. Нам иногда нужно именно вот, чтобы мы тыкнули наверх и попали именно в крестик. Вот. Или тыкнули наверх и вот вызвали меню какое-нибудь. Это зависит от задачи программы. И то же самое, я сейчас последнее замечание. И что касается шорткатов, то есть в данном случае мы видим вот эти вот края и корнеры. То есть, но одно дело, когда мы их замечаем, поскольку они довольно важны, они такие крайние степени нашего видения. Но другое дело, когда мы с ними взаимодействуем. Иногда действительно гораздо быстрее использовать, нажать одну клавишу на клавиатуре, чем пытаться куда-нибудь задвинуть это самое приложение в сторону. И тем более есть разница между экраном мобильника, к примеру, который вот всего ничего, его туда-сюда, и экраном монитора. То есть одно дело, когда мы двигаем чуть-чуть мышку, а другое дело, когда нам приходится куда-нибудь туда, в сторону утаскивать.
You're a developer, right?
Тестировщик.
Okay, test engineer. These are all points that I've heard a lot, and actually the quiz that you can take there, it explains some of those things. And yes, there are cases when there are exceptions to the rules, right? But you're wrong in the assumption that those are noticeable. People look here, they don't see this. And they don't have to look here. This is the essence of Fitz's law. You don't actually have to look there. You just move your mouse and you will hit this corner. That's the thing. You don't have to focus there. Yes, if you put like here some buttons, that's a problem, because the second row with pixels is not the same as the first one. The first one you don't have to target. The second one you already have to target. That's one problem. Another problem is that there are studies, actually studies, showing that, for example, in many applications there's a toolbar with options, and those buttons, they have icon and a label, right? And you can disable labels, making buttons smaller. And if you use those buttons often, you might think, well, I'm good with them. I will be able to hit them easier. But studies show that even proficient users, and usually those are developers or like hardcore kind of PC enthusiasts that do this, they disable labels because they don't need this, because they understand well enough. but they have more trouble hitting those buttons properly because they become smaller. And this is actually explained by Fitz's law. When buttons get smaller, you will hit them with more difficulty. Shortcut. I'm not saying that shortcuts are not needed. I use shortcuts all the time. Shortcuts are great, and the one thing you can do to become a power user of any application is to learn the shortcut. But the thing is, those five things, so those are definitely the most easily accessible for any user, especially for the beginner. And I think UX, a lot of times UX deals with beginners, because when you actually get familiar with the operating system or application, it's fine. If it has quirks, if it's not really easily accessible, you will survive because you know how it behaves. But it's important for the first user to be able to kind of feel comfortable. And those accessibility tricks, like making buttons larger, closer together, utilizing corners, they increase usability, they increase user experience, making your application more pleasurable to work with, more easy to understand as the time goes by. And then when they become power users, they can disable the hell out of everything and just use the shortcuts, right? Anyway, that's about it I wanted to say. Yeah.
Have you made any real studies about effectiveness of pop-up menus?
Not really, I cannot say I have. But there's the link, the 80 papers, maybe there's something about there. But the thing is, pop-up menus, if you talk about the right-click menu.
Yeah, Microsoft started to remove them, decrease.
Well, if you've seen, the right-click menu is the example of taking advantage of the pixel right under your mouse cursor. You don't have to go anywhere, just click and access it. And the same is popovers on iOS and I think Android as well. When you just tap on something and the menu appears right there when your finger is already there. It's like your cursor, you don't have to move anywhere else. It just doesn't appear somewhere at the bottom, it appears right there. So it's easier to hit it. And yes, there are studies about that, of course, but well, even both Apple and Microsoft, when they understand that users are familiar with the operating system already, they take away some things that are kind of too simple, too easy for the beginners. Like, for example, iOS, they started with the wood and leather and felt and all that skeuomorphic stuff. And then they removed it because users are already good enough. They understand. They don't have to kind of have analogies to the paradigms of the user interface to the real world. The same goes with the operating system on the computer. You know how start button behaves. It's fine. You know how other things behave. You can take them away if the users are familiar with the operating system. So if you have a steady customer base of the application, you don't look for increasing it largely. You can also refine the user interface, making work for existing users better, but taking away some stuff that is intended for first-time users.
But that didn't work with Windows 8.
Well, that's where they fucked up, right?
Okay, I think let's finish. Question from Vasiliy.
Thank you.